I'm curious about the whole like making practicing your like primary source of dopamine.
Yeah,
And Kaya recommended that I ask you about it.
sure.
Because I have ADHD and stuff like that. So if I can somehow adjust my mindset to make it like something like more than a chore to me, then I could probably actually do more of it and do it longer and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, in terms of making guitar your main source of dopamine, there are a couple things that we need to think about, right? So, um, the number one thing is what can you sacrifice to replace that with guitar? And what other sources of dopamine are you letting into your life, right? Because to make guitar, like let's think about what the question is here, right? Like, how do I make guitar my main source of dopamine? Well, what are the other sources of dopamine that you have, right? Maybe your phone. And I'm going to get real here, like phone, more than likely, right? Um, Pornography. We're all men here, I think. I don't think there are any women here. Um, but I mean, they're not
Yeah.
an exception to the rule either. But right, that's another thing. That's a big boost in dopamine. Um, phone would include social media and all that. Video games, I'm not sure if you're a gamer, but that's something that stimulates the mind quite a bit. Those dopamine receptors. Any form of substance like cigarettes, vaping, alcohol, drugs, anything of that nature, no, right? Like these are short term rewards and they're super stimulating in terms of dopamine. All of these things, like, they are quicker dopamine hits than playing guitar. Playing guitar and progressing at guitar is hard. You're not gonna see results after one practice session necessarily. I mean, I can guarantee that after one practice session your hands will feel faster by the end, and you might have learned something along the way, which I think is fun. But this kind of reward system is much more delayed than all of the things that I just mentioned. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of sacrifice involved. And I think the wrong approach would be to just go cold turkey and cut everything out of your life, right? Because that probably is going to be temporary, and it's not actually going to work. So the way that I would approach this is, well, there's a couple different things you could do. But for starters, and I actually picked this up from one of the students here in 52 Week Guitar Player. His name is Mike Batson. And basically, he made a challenge for himself. Like, he made a commitment to himself that he was just going to practice guitar every day for 7 days, right? So that's not really a crazy challenge. And he was able to achieve that pretty easily. And once he reached that seventh day, he was like, this is easy, and he decided to continue. So that 7 days turned into 10 days, which turned into 30 days, which turned into 60 days, which turned into 100 days, which turned into over like 100. It was 109 days to be specific. But like, that's a good place to start. Like, setting like a low-hanging fruit achievable goal that you can hit, like playing guitar every day for 7 days. And just by doing that, you will end up cutting some other things out of your life that distract you, just in order to achieve that, right? So let's say, I don't know how much time you have for practice, but like, let's imagine that you have 5 hours in an evening. You probably have more than that, I don't know. Like, imagine if you work or go to school, whatever, you get home at like 5 p.m. and maybe you have 5 hours, not including eating. So maybe eating takes an hour, but you get 5 hours to yourself, right? Just by deciding and committing to playing guitar for some of that time, other things will have to be cut out, right? At least a little bit. Like, if we take this to the extreme, imagine you're on your phone for that 5 hours. Well, if that was your routine and then you added guitar to that, right? well, then maybe you would not be on your phone for 5 hours. You'd be on your phone for 4 hours, and then your guitar you'd be on that for 1 hour. You know what I mean? So just by making this commitment, you will inevitably cut some other things out a little bit. Like you'll make a little bit of sacrifice, which is a good thing, right? And that's how I would start. Because to cut everything out immediately would be a lot of, would be a big ask. Probably wouldn't happen. You'd probably fail. And, we got to set a little bit more reasonable expectations here just to start with. But that's how I would approach it, I've been talking a while. Do you have any questions, comments, concerns, Carson? Is this making sense?
I know you're making a lot of sense. I've the literally every I think all the sources of big dopamine that you mentioned, I'm struggling with right now because I could do a better job of like just a piece of that time that I do have, which I have more than enough time, honestly. There's no excuse that I shouldn't be on here like practicing or whatever, but I could just take a piece of that time and just be consistent with, like an hour of it at least, or an hour in general, I guess. Then
Yeah,
I could actually, feel more satisfied about myself probably in the long run.
definitely, man. Definitely. How old are you?
I'm 22.
Okay. Yeah. Another thing I've noticed just from this conversation is you've twice described yourself in a negative sense. Like you said initially that you had ADHD, and like if I'm going to quote you, if I quote you specifically, what you said is I have ADHD, which is something that you did not say with pride, right? You said that not in a very cheerful manner, right? So I assume it's something that you would like to change about yourself. Right? And obviously, I'm not a clinical psychologist or anything, but you said something else as well. Is you've got a lot of shit going on right now. You know what I mean? So just what I'm picking up from this conversation is you're describing yourself negatively, right? There are some negative things in your life, and you're kind of like making it part of your identity is what I'm hearing. Because anytime someone says like an I statement, like I am this way, that's a very psychologically strong thing to say because it's like you're stepping into that identity, which I think this is a good thing when you associate yourself with good things, like I practice consistently, right? Step into that identity, right? That's a good identity to be in. I am disciplined, right? I show up. I showed up to this live stream, right? I showed up to 52-week guitar player. These are all positive associations, right? So just be very careful when describing yourself, because if you're going to describe yourself in a negative way, then like your actions will follow, and your actions will create your habits, and your habits create your routine, and then your routines run your life and dictate your character, right? So this is we're kind of going deep for the first question on the live stream here, but that's okay, right? Because I think these are very good things to know and to be aware of.